you'll need to speak into the microphone for the TV.
Okay, I'm going to introduce the candidates, actually have them each introduce themselves and provide you with a little sketch about who they are. And they each have 5 minutes. So we're going to start with Adam Brown.
Well, thank you for having me over in western side of the state, and I'm coming to you from the far eastern side of the state, Ontario, Oregon. I've been the city manager there for at least 6 years in June. And a little bit about myself. I've been married for 25 years in August of this year, and I have 6 kids. Three high school graduates, 1 college graduate already, and 3 at home this next year. So my professional career has taken me across 3 states. My childhood and education and other life experiences have taken me across 9 states. And so I've just kind of learned to be adaptable, and I've learned to kind of enjoy something about everywhere I lived. I did marry an Oregonian in, like I said, 25 years ago from just up the road in Malala. And it took me 19 years to bring her back to Oregon. And I'm about 6 hours away from her parents right now. And this would be a great opportunity to bring her closer to her family. So I've been very purposeful in my career about getting experiences from mentors. And so that's taken me to different forms of government, different types of government, different states. I've worked in multiple counties and multiple cities, and taken a lot of advice from mentors that said, it's time to leave. And so I'd move on, and after a while, they'd tell me it's time to leave again. And so I've been very fortunate to work with some really, really great people. And so that's me.
Great, thank you, Adam. And Eileen.
Let me turn this on first. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Happy to be here tonight. Look forward to the questions and meeting you all. So I'm Eileen Stein. I'm currently serving as the Interim Deputy Director for Business and Community Services at Clackamas County. So that is a mouthful. I previously served as the city manager in Westland, Mount Angel, and Sisters. So I have been all over various parts of the state. And that total amount of time is 17 years. So I have 17 years of experience as a city manager in Oregon. I've also served in various management capacities in the city manager's office and the Public Works Department in the city of Springfield. And I was 11 years there. I hold a master's degree in business and public administration and a bachelor's degree in political science from University of California at Irvine. I have served on the OCCMA Board of Directors, the Oregon City Management Association Board of Directors, was president in 2011. Have also served on the League of Oregon Cities Board of Directors in the city management capacity. I'm chair of the Local Government Advisory Committee at Portland State University, and I also co-teach a class in Public Works Management with the Salem Public Works Director there. Beyond that, I am married to Gary. I have 2 children, Hayden, who's living with us and trying to find his way in life. And I have a daughter, Chloe, who is on the East Coast studying national nuclear security policy. Things that we like about this area are the mild climate. We've been living in Salem for the last 8 years, and we just love it here. Which we just love to take walks, hikes, bike rides, gardening, and being close to friends in other parts of the state. So being right here in this Salem, Keizer area is very, it just suits our lifestyle very much. So would love to be involved to a greater degree in Kaiser. I'm involved with the faith community, which is very important to me. It keeps me grounded, centered, inspired, and humble. My leadership style is best described as being a servant leader. So I am wanting to make sure that I take care of the employees at City Hall so that they can take care of you. I have been through some tough political situations in my years as a city manager, and I'm well connected. I have the experience, and I'm tested. So I just want you to know that that if you were to hire me, you would get a very battle-tested city manager. So, thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. Then we go to Tim.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tim Wood. I've been a resident of Kaiser since 2006, and looking out there, that means that I'm the new kid. I see a lot of longtime residents out there, and I appreciate seeing you all come out tonight. I've been in the accounting finance world for about 20 years. I have a mix of private industry and governmental experience, local government. I remember my first job out of school was to go audit the city of Albany. That was many years ago, and it was actually, I think, before Wes actually got to the city of Albany. I started with the city in 2009 as a result of the economic downturn. I come from G.I. Joe's, the sporting goods retailer. As an outdoor person, I was pretty sad to see G.I. Joe's go away. They did have a lot of things that you can't really find anywhere else. I became the finance director in 2016. I could list off a bunch of accomplishments since then, changing banks, multiple system upgrades, process changes that have saved thousands of dollars and a lot of time, issued some debt to build a bridge, rolled out online bill pay, to name a few. But those are all things that typical finance directors do. They're accomplishments, but not really ones that I'm super, super proud of, to be honest. What I am proud of and what I consider significant is watching the staff reduce the number of utility shutoffs each month. Watching those I work with be comfortable and be willing to accept new challenges and grow into those challenges. Seeing several $100,000 go out into the community in pandemic relief over the last couple of years. I'm hearing how easy the city of Kaiser is to work with. I guess probably my biggest accomplishment that I will remember for a long time is breaking up a middle school fight at the skate park. We did come to a peaceful resolution at the end. I think I actually had a positive influence and created some positive relationships. And if you know middle schoolers, that really just means they nod at me every once in a while, which is kind of cool. So why am I interested in being the city manager? I think well, to be honest, it's a career opportunity. This is kind of what finance directors do after a while. In the private world, CFOs become CEOs all the time. In the governmental world, finance directors become city managers. There's plenty of city managers in Oregon with the finance director background. Why does this make sense? I think there's a lot of reasons for it. I have a solid understanding of the money. I know how the money works, so I know how the city works. I spend a lot of time thinking about the future and how policies and processes and plans impact the future. I have to work with others to get things done. The budgets don't happen by themselves, annual reports, those kind of things. I also have to interact with the community. I've interacted with quite a few of you on occasion. Occasionally, I have to resolve disputes. These are things that finance directors do, but they're also things that city managers do. I think there is very much an overlap in responsibilities there. I also think this is a great opportunity. I'm applying for this position because it is at the City of Keizer. I'm not looking to go somewhere else. My heart is here with the city, and I hope I can spend the next 20 years here. Keiser's kind of hit middle age. I guess we're turning 40 this year. I think about that and I think, what was Keizer 20 years ago, 40 years ago? We didn't have Keizer Station, no In-N-Out hamburgers. Keizer Rapids Park was kind of a dream. So a lot's changed. I think about, what does the future have for us? Right now, I think we're sitting fairly well. We do have some opportunities for us. We're bumping up against growth constraints. We're going to have a few long-time staff retirements in the near future. Got a few new master plans that we've been working on and need to work on. I also think it might be time to dust off our strategic plan from 2009. So what do I offer? I offer a solid understanding of how cities work, specifically Keizer. I have a forward-looking eye with an eye on financial stability, sustainability. And I continue to work as a team with the council, with the staff, with the residents, with our volunteers. And I think I can also bring a little bit of stability. It's been a rough couple of years for the city, just administratively. Again, I appreciate all of you being here, spending your time with us tonight. And I look forward to continuing to be engaged with all of you as this process moves forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. For those of you who may be wondering, Wes is playing the role of timekeeper tonight, so when he raises his finger, he's not objecting to anything. He's just letting the speakers know they've got a minute left.
Glad you clarified.
Right. So now we're going to go into questions, and these are questions that have been submitted by members of the community. So we're going to start with Adam, and then give each of you the opportunity to respond to the same question. So here's the first question. What have you learned about the Keizer community and its history?
Well, I read that it was started, I think it was it T.D. Kaiser, I think, that was founded in around 1843. But you've been a community, a incorporated city for 40 years this year. And I think what I've learned most as I've driven around and investigated, I can see why those values of spirit and pride and volunteerism are so important. This community has a lot to be proud of. It's amazing. It's an amazing place. It has things in the community that are amenities that draw people in, that make people want to call it home. And it's a very livable community. And it's been well run for a long time, so far as I can tell. And so honestly, this would be a new thing for me. I started my career in the Washington, D.C. area, and there were some very well run governments there that I was able to learn from. And then the last 14 years have really been going somewhere and building them back up, from making them more sophisticated and more responsive. And so this would be kind of the first opportunity where I can go in and see things already going well, and we can focus on adding value to it. So you got a great community here. I'm privileged to be even considered for this position, and I wish you good luck.
Thank you. Eileen, same question.
Thank you. What have I learned about Keizer and its history? I would say, yes, Keizer's a livable community, and it is well run. So my hat's off to the previous administration and previous staffs who have built the community into what it is. It would be a joy to be part of. I also I was really attracted to statements that were made in the paper as Kaiser leaders were looking looking to 2022 and what their goals were. And I just want to repeat them. Mayor Clark made a statement about having attitudes of grace, gratitude, and grit. And Councilor Kohler said, for everyone to know that someone loves them. And Councilor Starr said to set aside divisive dialogue and make an earnest attempt at understanding each other and finding win-wins. And when I read this, it just really gripped my heart that what a wonderful place to be part of. And those kinds of values and statements are so close to what I hold dear to myself, and I would just love to be a part of it.
Thanks, Eileen. Tim?
Well, I suppose the city motto of pride, spirit, volunteerism would really come into play here. The city itself has a lot of pride in itself. We take care of our assets. You look out, we have an excellent park system. We've been investing in that. We have an excellent public safety. We've been investing in that. We have more than you can imagine as far as volunteers go. We have so many projects that have been built on volunteer hours. The amphitheater, to name one, Kaiser Rapids Park, the Big Toy. All of these assets that, I guess these aren't my words, but Kaiser shows up. If you have a need, someone in Kaiser will show up. You look at the community pages in Facebook, someone posts a need, and within minutes, someone is providing referrals or offering to meet someone to give them diapers or food or whatever they need. So I'm very much humbled. I think one of the biggest things that I've recognized is how well this community does function with how little resources we truly have as a government agency. We do rely on our volunteers. We have folks that spend countless hours mowing parks, getting things set up for events. We also take a lot of spirit in what we do. We have, annual events. We have the Holiday Lights Parade. We have Kaiser Fest. We have all these different events of people just coming together to celebrate being part of Kaiser. So I think we truly do live up to our motto of pride, spirit, volunteerism in so many ways that, I can't even begin to name them all. But I guess I really do think that, not my words, but Kaiser shows up. So thank you.
Thanks, Tim. So question number 2, and this time we'll start with Eileen. And the question is, how does your experience mesh with the needs you see in Kaiser?
I'll talk about a few of them. Similar to Kaiser kind of bumping up against its urban growth boundary limitations, Westland was also a community that had bumped up against its urban growth boundary limitations as well. And so working within that context, it was a lot of discussion about what else do we want to be because we don't want to grow anymore, and how else can we develop as a community. So there was similarities there, and in Sisters. My entire career, I have focused on economic development, community development projects, and opportunities that I've had. And the projects that are facing Kaiser remind me a lot of those early year projects, revitalization, Kaiser revitalization plan, for example, the park master plan, the infrastructure master plans that need to be done are all projects that I have worked on in all the communities that I've been at. And so I think I know I bring that to the table, and again, would love to work on similar projects here in Kaiser. So.
Great. Thanks. Tim?
I guess I'll put my financial hat on for a moment. Our low tax base really, unfortunately, drives a lot of our conversations to a financial perspective. So as my role currently as finance director, I really do have a very much an emphasis on looking to the future and seeing how we can sustainably provide services to the community. I think no matter what, that's going to be an ongoing issue. It is an ongoing issue for a lot of cities, but it's one that we really do take to heart here. So I think that would be one of the ways that my background has somewhat prepared me for this opportunity. I guess also along with that, the ability to coordinate with folks across different departments across the city through different community groups. The budgeting process here, it actually kind of pales in comparison to the budgeting process at some of my previous employers, where I've had 30 physical locations with up to probably 100 different folks that had to have input. So I think from that perspective, I have a demonstrated history of being able to coordinate with folks to accomplish the needed tasks as we go forward, on site and also off of site as well. So those are some of the ways that I think my experience here has helped. I think it also helps that having been part of this community and also actually working for the city, I do have a firm understanding of how we currently do things. And also, some ideas about how we might be able to improve things into the future. So with that, I will turn it over to Adam.
Thanks, Tim. Yep, Adam, go ahead.
What does my experience with the needs mesh with the needs in Kaiser? One of the term that comes to mind is Kaizen, and it's a Japanese word for continuous incremental improvement. And I think you have a city that's been well run for a long time, and so you don't necessarily need somebody to come in and change how things are doing, but who can keep it moving forward at incremental improvements. I've been in organizations with from $30 million to nearly $1 billion budgets, and one of the things I've been able to do in all those communities is start some type of process improvement program. I taught back earlier in the 2000s what was known as total quality management, and it was back to the studies of Deming, Crosby, and Duran that made the electronics in Asia work so well. Their ideas weren't received well in the US until after they were successful in Asia. But regardless of that, it's probably boring details, but what I have is experience in teaching teams how to work through problems and how to improve incrementally. And then the other thing that's been a consistent across my career is strategic planning. In Michigan, I was able to integrate their strategic plan. They had one when I got there, and they really needed somebody to implement it so it didn't sit on the shelf. And so we put systems into place that operationalized that plan and made it happen. And it worked well enough that one of our department heads who we shared with another county was able to convince that county administrator to have me come work with their board. And so I did a couple of stints as a consultant with another county and then a library district working to create their strategic plan. And then in Ontario, I worked with them to create their strategic plan, which we're in our 4th year of the implementation of it.
Thank you. So Tim, you're up first for this one. And this is a question that I think all of you have at least partially answered, but here's the question. Why do you want this position?
Well, as I indicated in my opening statement, I'll be honest, this is a career opportunity. It's a step forward for me. And like I indicated, it's not uncommon for finance directors to become city managers. So I look forward to that opportunity. Again, this is a target of opportunity for me. A year ago, I never would have imagined I would be sitting up here talking to you folks. I thought maybe 5, 7, 10 years from now, maybe this would be the appropriate time. But I'm not going to pass up a good opportunity. I think this is a good opportunity. The city of Keizer, you know, we are holding our own. We're doing well. Pandemic aside, we seem to be continuing to move forward with a lot of our plans, with a lot of our goals. As we look at the council goals, you know, a lot of them we're starting to check off. We're getting them done. I think we'll continue to move forward with those. So I think, like I say, it's a career opportunity, but it's also a good opportunity. I appreciate having spent the last several years working and living in the same town. I appreciate seeing folks and being able to talk about city business with them, giving them the rundown of what we're working on. So I guess I have a little bit of pride in what the city of Keizer does as an employer, the work that we do. And I think it's valued by the residents here. So I'm looking forward to, you know, continuing on serving all of you just in a different capacity. So thank you.
Thanks, Tim. And Adam?
A couple of things come to mind. One, it's a great opportunity. It's a great community, and y'all have done a lot of things right. I apologize if I throw in a y'all here and there, but I spent a lot of time in the South. So, but it's just a great community. I have looked forward as kind of, I would say, maybe midpoint of my career, and thought that I would like to be in the Valley here, closer to family. So this is really opportunistic to be near family. I've always lived, at least the last 14 years, lived in the communities that I work for, and have enjoyed that aspect of it. But those are the two primary reasons, really. It's a great city to work for, and to be near family.
Great. Eileen?
So Kaiser has a long-standing reputation of addressing problems on an intergovernmental basis, and I have a real strength and desire for partnerships and working across communities and organizations and doing things on an intergovernmental basis. It's a real strength of mine. I've been complimented for my intergovernmental experience lots of times throughout my career. So I think this is a good fit for me, this community. And I've lived in the Mid-Willamette Valley for 8 years. I have lots of connections, regional, with the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments, SEDCOR, those types of organizations. I've always had my eye on Kaiser as a possibility. And now that the position is open, it was time to apply. It is close to Portland State University, which would allow me to continue my connections there as well. So, and as I mentioned before, the statements that were made by the council just really grabbed my heart, and I would just love to be a part of this community.
Thank you. Okay, next question, and Adam gets the first opportunity to respond to this one. Are you familiar with the National Association of City Transportation Officials? And if so, would you encourage their design standards for city streets and other urban infrastructure?
The national, I'm sorry,
The National Association of City Transportation Officials.
okay.
I'm not familiar with the organization itself. And I guess I could stop there, but
Okay.
I did work in the Department of Transportation in the DC suburban community. And we, I think, mostly used, I think, NASDO standards. So, and that's, we took over a road district in Michigan. The legislature opened up an opportunity for counties to consume into their own organization what were freestanding districts. And we took the opportunity to do it with 2 other counties in the state and took over the transportation division. So we were in both those communities in Virginia and Michigan, building roads and working with road engineers. And I work with a lot of road engineers in Ontario.
Great. Eileen?
I'm not familiar with the National Association of the Transportation Officials either. I am familiar with NASDO standards, and I do have quite a bit of experience in transportation planning. For example, developed the Sister Streetscape. When you drive through Sisters now and you see everything that's there, that was a project that I developed and came under. It came to fruition under my watch as city manager there. If I understand the question, perhaps, is there a standard roadway design? No, there isn't. It really depends on what the needs are for the transportation corridor that is being considered. There are so many different limits on right-of-way width and needs for that transportation facility and different categories of transportation facility that what you're trying to achieve for transportation through a corridor, it really is kind of on a case-by-case basis. What does the community want? What's going to make the transportation facility safer? What are the possibilities for the corridor? Those are all things that need to be considered before any standard decisions are made about what the facility ought to include.
Thanks, Eileen. Tim?
I think this must be a trick question. I guess one of the lessons that I've learned is don't talk about things you don't really know about. So, no, I don't know this entity. If this were to come up, I would probably look at the Public Works Director and say, could you help me out with this one? Or otherwise, I would probably say, I think we need to take a recess here while we go and figure out if there's something that we're missing. We as a city here, we rely heavily on outsourcing a lot of the projects that we do. We don't have a lot of folks dedicated to building streets. We rely on our architects, our city engineers, and I would fully expect them to understand all of the standards, and I would expect them to come and explain that to the city council. If there was issues that we were running into, that's you turn to the experts. In this role as a city manager, you're kind of the coach. You're not necessarily expected to make all the plays. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, so next question, we'll start with Eileen. And Here it is. What were your most difficult challenges? I guess what were the most difficult challenges in your last city manager job, and how were they resolved? And Tim, you'll have to modify your response there. So what were the most difficult challenges in your last city manager job, and how were they resolved?
For me, the most difficult challenges were working in a community where there were so many different expectations for how to proceed, which translated into different council perceptions of how the city should proceed, which is fine. The council held a goal-setting session every year, and a lot of good work was done during those goal-setting sessions. But there were times when councilors didn't agree and didn't speak up and participate in the goal-setting session. They preferred to wait until the goal-setting session was over, and kind of passively aggressively pushed for their own personal agendas. And that was very difficult for me to contend with. I think I did well in contending with it, but it was still a very difficult period of time. How it was resolved, ultimately the council asked me to leave. I respect the council's wishes. They desired to go in a different direction, and that's the council's prerogative.
Thank you. Tim?
I think this is a relatively easy one for me. To me, it always gets down to the people. I think probably one of the most challenging situations I've had in the past was, working with an employee that was a great employee, did great things, but for some reason, just the wheels fell off the cart at one point in time. Having to work through that process, it was challenging. I wanted the person to succeed. I wanted them to do well. I wanted them to continue on doing the great work that they had been doing. Unfortunately, it just wasn't going to come to pass. So we did have to separate ways. But I think that it's not just with the city staff, it's also dealing with volunteers, with counselors, with residents. Whenever you have to deal with people, and sometimes you're dealing with their livelihoods, you're making decisions that have impacts on them. I think it really does kind of tear at my heart. I want to be empathetic with them, but unfortunately, we can't always, let everything go. At some point, there are things that, we're just going to have to live with, and if you can't accept it, then we're probably going to have to part ways, or try to find a different solution, but you're probably not going to be happy with it. So for me, the challenging is always, dealing with the people, and especially when there's a time of conflict or challenge. So thank you.
Thanks, Tim. And Adam?
Well, as a city manager, you've got anywhere from 7 to, I've had 12 when I worked in a county board, 12 commissioners. And as a city manager now, I have 7. One of the challenges is the turnover. I've now, after 6 years, been there longer than the entire council, and the longest serving council members have been there only 3 years. And so that's a big challenge to go from 7 bosses to 7 new bosses in a period of about less than 2 years. And what is required is just adaptability. And one of the challenges we have on the eastern side of the state is that we're abutted up against Idaho, Idaho doesn't have many city managers. It's a strong mayor form of government. And so many people look over across the river and say, well, why do we need a city manager? Doesn't the mayor run the city? And so there's that temptation. We actually had a charter amendment committee this past year. The committee shot that proposal down, and it came back up, and the council ultimately voted it down, so it's not going to the charter amendment process on the ballot. But this is one thing that marks our time here is in these days is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. They referred to as the VUCA world. And it just requires a lot of facilitation, team skills, personal skills to manage. And in city management, it's the longer I'm in it, the more I realize it's all about managing those relationships. I have somewhat regular meetings with my council members almost on a monthly basis, whether it's two of them go out to lunch with me on agenda days. I meet with the council leadership on once a week over breakfast, and some of them know they can walk in my office at any time and talk to me about them. And my job is 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. I understand my bosses have their own jobs that they can't always be interrupted in, so sometimes I talk to them at night, and it's really about whatever works for them. They are the elected leaders. I respect that they have to go get votes, not me. I only have to get 7 votes or 4 votes on any one issue, but those elected leaders, they have to walk the streets, make the relationships and trust to get enough people to vote them into office, and that's the process I respect and the profession I signed up for. I enjoy being able to give a professional opinion, but after discourse from the council, taking that and implementing it to the best of our ability as a team.
Thanks. Okay. Next, Tim, you're up first on this one, I think. And that is, tell us about your greatest achievement as a manager.
Well, I suppose I already kind of hinted at it a little bit. I think some of my achievements, well, the ones that I'm most proud of, I really like the fact that I've seen some of my employees grow to the point where they can accept challenges that are a little bit beyond their skill level. I think it's been good to see a few of those rise to the challenge, and over the years, go from a really good employee to a great employee, able to really adapt to the technical requirements throughout the finance group. So that's probably, again, I circle back to the people because I do think it's about the people a lot of the time. So that'll be one of the accomplishments that I think is great, of seeing others move on to bigger and better. So thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Adam, your greatest achievement?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I think it has to come down to the team building that I do. Just coming over here has caused somewhat of a stir with my coworkers back home, and the fact that it means so much to them for me to want to stay there, that it speaks volumes. They have been through a lot of city managers in Ontario, and they are notorious for turning them over. And we have a close team there now, and we've broken down walls, barriers. We work together to solve problems. We don't have silos anymore, and we have just done some really awesome stuff there, and it's all because of that team building.
Thanks, Adam. Eileen?
I have to agree that developing the people has been my greatest achievement and source of satisfaction on the job. Just watching a project get done and know that your constant coaching of the employees got that thing, whether it was a program or a project or a policy, that your constant coaching and believing in the employees is what got that project or program or policy, got it done. Just time and time again, I would just really say that just the growth of the employees and the opportunity, and as I mentioned before, if you take care of the employees will take care of the community. And so just knowing that I can have that kind of impact on an individual life and seeing them turn around and serve the community well is really, really satisfying.
Great, so just take a moment here to remind everyone to please fill out a comment card, leave it in the back. We're not quite finished yet, but Mary, did you want to say anything about that?
First of all, I want to thank all of our finalists for being here tonight and for sharing who you are with our community. I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. Again, Kaiser shows up, and there's people here, but also people watching on television, and you can do this, I believe, electronically to submit comments. I think we have a way, we have an email that's out there for people to send comments. So what I'd like you to do is to be able to grab one of these cards, if you can fill it out here while it's fresh on your mind, or drop it off tomorrow. We're going to need this very quickly. No, it has to be tonight. Right now, I'm getting a signal from the back, tonight. We need your comments, your thoughts, your impressions, how you feel about what you have heard tonight, and leave that with us. We are going to need that tomorrow for the interview process. Tomorrow morning, these fine individuals will be facing the department head and the city council interview panels in a little more formal process. But your comments are important, so please take time, fill this out, and turn it in the back to Michelle. Wave your hand. Michelle, back there. Yes, Michelle and Kristen, who, dream team right there of HR. They would like to get these from you as quickly as possible. Your comments are important. Your thoughts are important. Your feedback's important. And that's why we wanted to make sure we had time with these folks and you tonight. So thank you for coming. Fill these out and let us know what you're thinking. And thank you all.
Thank you, Mary Claire. So we're going to continue a little further.
Oh.
And just trying to think who is going to be first next. I think it was Adam. Okay. Sorry. So Adam, how would you handle a complaint that a supervisor was giving preferential or special treatment to only one of their employees?
I would call Michelle, the HR director. honestly, it's some of the most unpleasant things you have to deal with, the city manager and the human resources field, and managing relationships between employees is challenging. There's an obvious, after an investigation, and if that is in fact the case, then there's a sit-down with the supervisor. I've had those sit-downs with supervisors about various issues, and it's best to address those head-on and not without delay, so that you can move past and improve on it. But you talk with them, set out the expectations, and then the outcome is in their hands. I unfortunately had to counsel a employee, and it was that same situation. I had to say, this is what we expect, and when you cross that line, you've had enough warnings that that's it. And at some point, that employee crossed the line, and we said we had to terminate her. And I unfortunately had to do that. But somebody in the organization has to do that, and it's very unpleasant, but it's important for the organization to move past it.
Thanks. Eileen?
I think it's really important to make sure that there's a fact-finding that's happening, so that the first thing I would do is take the complaint to the supervisor and let him or her know that this complaint has been received. But I've had situations where I've had to do this as well, and it's important. Again, to fact find, investigate the complaint promptly, gather all the facts as you can promptly, and give both sides an opportunity to explain what their concerns are. I think it's incumbent upon the supervisor to know there's a higher standard of behavior that I have for the supervisor, and so if there is a doubt, that I would say, the supervisor needs to make sure that they're not providing preferential treatment if it's found to be the case. But it's really important to make sure that there's a thorough investigation, and so that you're fact-finding, and that you know what is going on.
Thanks. And Tim?
I guess I agree with Adam. I would call HR first. That would be one of the first things, and just get a little bit of perspective. I think the important thing also to recognize is, as the city manager, ultimately you're going to be the one that has to make a decision on any kind of disciplinary action. So you kind of need to remove yourself a little bit from the investigation, from that process, just so you can have somewhat of an independent eye. But yeah, you do need to figure out some kind of a process to do fact-finding investigation. There's always two sides to every story. Oftentimes there's 4 or 5 sides to every story. So you kind of need to flesh through and have someone that, that can do that for you, that's a trusted resource, so that when the facts do come back, as a city manager, you can have somewhat of an independent evaluation of those facts, just to see if there is, a policy issue, or if there's a legal issue, or if there's really any merit to the allegation. So that would be somewhat of the process that I would work through as a city manager. And obviously it depends on, who the complaint is against, where in the organization that investigation may start at. So, thank you.
Thanks. So staying with the employee relations team, Eileen, The question is to discuss your experience with dealing with and maintaining relationships with unions. Have you had experience in that area? And are you familiar with the Oregon Public Employee Collective Bargaining Act?
Yes, I am familiar with the Oregon Public Employee Collective Bargaining Act. I had, in Mount Angel and in Westland, though they were both union organizations. In Mount Angel, I had a police union as well as SEIU. And then in Mount Angel, or in Westland, I had the Clackamas County Police Officers Association and AFSCME. And my experience in Mount Angel involved literally sitting at the negotiating table during the negotiations. It was my first time having a union shop. Sisters was not unionized environment, but it was pretty easy negotiations. And I was told that I was quite lucky because they can be quite complex. When I got to Westland, we were in the middle of AFSCME negotiations, and they were very, very extended. A lot of factors that went on that caused them to be extended, including there were a lot of issues on the table. There were inexperienced negotiators on AFSCME's side, on the employees' side. There were a turnover in the AFSCME representatives. And it just resulted in very extended negotiations to the point that, and there wasn't enough coordination amongst the union members. We had everything from public works to administrative staff in that union, and nobody could agree on what the priorities were in terms of how to settle the contract. And it got to the point that the union members started to talk about a strike. And I remember talking with the union or the labor attorney that we used in Mount Angel, and I said, oh my gosh, I've gone from 0 to 60 in terms of labor negotiations. In Westland, I did not sit at the table. I was a decision maker, but I would get the report from our labor negotiators and HR department that how negotiations had gone that day, and it was they were just very intricate and very extended, and it didn't need to be, but again, the union was just not very well organized in its representation. And we eventually settled, and we did not go to strike, thank goodness, but we did eventually settle after a proposal was put on the table for the union, and the membership decided that they wanted to settle rather than go to strike. So I was pleased about that, but it was a union, it was a negotiation, or it was a proposal that management had put on the table on behalf of the union, and the membership decided that it was more acceptable to take it than to strike. So I was very pleased at that.
Thank you. Tim?
Earlier I indicated that a lot of the things we do, we have to take a financial sustainability perspective with it. Unfortunately, negotiations is one of those areas. Since I started with the city in 2009, one of my responsibilities was to run the numbers behind the scenes. I would be the person doing the calculation, trying to figure out, how much each of the different sides' proposals would cost the city, and if we could justify it, if we could actually afford it. There is implications if you agree to a package that you can't afford, and we as a city have to be cognizant of that. I have gone to the negotiating table and done some presentations, really to present where the city's financial picture really was. So I've been to that point. I do agree that as the city manager, probably not going to be sitting at the negotiating table as the decision maker, as Eileen had indicated as well. I think that does have some risk associated with it. So you have to really have a team, that knows the goals, the objectives of the city, and is able to communicate those. I do believe that the city of Keizer, our goal is to be reasonable. We don't expect, our law enforcement or public safety folks or our public works folks to work for nothing. They do important work. We value that work as a city. So when we come to the table here, I've never been in a situation where we've tried to lowball or we've tried to play a fast one. It's always been, we want something that's reasonable. We want happy employees because happy employees make happy residents. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Adam?
I started my career in Virginia, which is a right-to-work state, and when I first moved to Michigan, I was just kind of blown away, like, oh my gosh, we have to talk about wages with the employees, and so it was kind of a shock to my system there. We had 11 unions in that organization. We had 600 employees. The unions varied in size from 300 members to 6, and I'm currently working on my 23rd labor negotiation as a lead negotiator, and I've been at the table for a lot more than that. I had to do 11 at the same time. The last year I was in Michigan before I came to Oregon. I've been through mediation multiple times, been through arbitration, and fortunately been able to settle a lot of cases right literally minutes before arbitration. And you have to understand the levers and changes that all of those mechanisms bring, and the risks also associated with those levers and change being mediation, arbitration. Our council recently has been wanting to be involved more at a granular level in negotiations, and it's honestly hard for some of them to not be at the table because they're business people and they like to make the deals. So I've had to adapt to bring them a much more granular strategy to I always meet with council before I go into negotiations and get a clear strategy so that we know what to expect. When the strategy has to change, then we go back and meet with the council and talk about the strategy. And we've created all those spreadsheets that have the fully burdened costs so that we can be able to crank the numbers out pretty quick as things change. So labor negotiations I'm more familiar with it than I would like to be.
Okay, we're going to try to provide some time for the public to interact with you directly. And I think I'm going to do one last question. So here we go. So this would be Tim, right? Raise your hand, Tim. You want the last question? Okay. So what are your thoughts about incorporating topics such as climate change and green equity and distribution of ecosystem services into the planning and decision-making process in Kaiser?
I think it's important to have those as considerations. Are they the ultimate consideration? Not necessarily. I guess does the question, do I believe in global warming, those kind of things? Well, I'm not really a scientist, but I would tend to agree with some of those positions, yes. I think as we move into the future, there's only so much oil in the ground. We're going to have to figure out, alternate resources that we can use to help the city run. So I guess the quick answer is yes, I do think that they need to play a factor, and it's something that the city needs to start being aware of and start coming up with some plans to address that in the near future. So, thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Adam?
Well, it's such a divisive topic, especially on the other side of the state. It's very, very divisive. One of the important things, though, is reframing these questions. Whether we post a question of there is whether global warming is happening, or more recently referred to as climate change, we can get hung up talking about whether it is or it isn't happening, whether there's data or there's not data for it. But when we talk about our farmers in Eastern Oregon who rely on reservoirs, particularly the one around ours was a 45-mile channel from a reservoir in the Oahe Dam that was built in 1933, I believe, in that general time frame. And when those reservoirs are only 6% full, they're not going to have water to feed their onions to grow. We ship 1 billion pounds of onions a year out of that general area. And so we don't want to get caught up in whether climate change is real or isn't it. But when we start talking about right down to the roots, no pun intended, about whether there's water for a farmer next year, then that's a big deal. When you go over to the coast in Lincoln City or Newport and you see the lines on the pavement that say tsunami safe zone or something to that effect, that's real. That's a real deal. We watched that on TV unfold in Indonesia and Thailand. That made it real for a lot of people. That made it real for me. And I don't, like I said, I don't need to get caught up in a debate about whether it's real or not, but we need to address issues about are we living sustainably? And it's not hard to look down the road and say, but we have to continue to adapt what we're doing so that we have a livable community for our families and our kids. They're going to live past us.
Thanks.
These are big issues. They're global issues. We have to do our part, but they are big issues, and they are out of our control to a certain extent. But we have to do our part, and I think it's incumbent upon every city to be thinking about it and having some kind of an action plan. But they are very big issues. I agree with what's been said about the local impact of these decisions, the local impact of whether it's Lincoln City or Ontario or Kaiser, Oregon. What is the impact of, what are we seeing here, and how do we begin to address what we're seeing in our local community? So we have to address how we see the impact in our local community, and begin to just to do our part in do our part in terms of responsibility for global warming.
Well, thanks all of you. We're going to adjourn this part of the discussion this evening and invite you to stay with the community members and perhaps interact with them as you can. And I want to thanks to the community members who came out tonight. I think you've seen three really excellent candidates, and the city council is going to be conducting the final interviews and making a decision here shortly. So they need to hear from you in the community. And the mayor's coming to back up.
So again, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you all to our candidates. Let's give them all a hand for coming and for this time with them. And as Gary said, please stay and visit and have a chance to do a little meet and greet. And thank you all for coming.